As autumn deepened over Akita, the reds and golds of fallen leaves softened the scars left by the great storm. Yet the people's hearts still carried its weight. Aya, often lingering in the chapel after long shifts at the clinic, could not yet pray, but felt a fragile hope stirring within her, like light breaking through a curtain of doubt. One evening, Sister Sasagawa sat quietly beside her and whispered, "You don't have to speak. Sometimes faith begins in the silence." Across town, Kenji Takahashi wrestled with his own past, confessing to Father Miguel, "I thought power could save me, but it blinded me," to which the priest replied, "True strength comes from letting go." In the common garden, life returned with children's laughter, and little Haru, born just after the typhoon, toddled over to Sister Sasagawa with a smooth river stone. She smiled, saying, "Faith is shaped by every trial it endures." Winter brought snow, but in Aya's heart, storms still raged until one night, kneeling in the chapel, she poured out her pain. The sister told her, even the darkest night must give way to dawn, and tears washed away years of hurt. Luca, a pilgrim from Italy, warned the villagers with stories of distant lands, healed by faith, reminding them that the greatest journey is into the heart. On Christmas Eve, the chapel glowed with candlelight as Father Miguel declared, "The true miracle is in carrying the light of love into darkness," and Kenji, Aya, Luca, and Sister Sasagawa stood united in shared faith. As spring returned, the sister's health waned, but her spirit blazed, leaving in her journal, "Faith is the seed planted in suffering, watered by tears, nourished by hope." After her passing, her words became Aya's anchor. Kenji's humility grew into quiet service, and Luca stayed to witness small, unnoticed miracles, a shared candy, a gift of vegetables, an old man in tearful prayer. On the typhoon's anniversary, the village lit candles at the grotto, a silent promise to rise again together. Weeks later, troubling news spread worldwide, and letters reached Aya from across the globe asking for the truth of the prophecy. In the chapel's candlelight, she read Sister Sasagawa's final warning, "The greatest trial will come in the coldness of hearts. Begin the work now," and they did, though storms still came. Akita became a place of welcome, its people living the prophecy not as fear, but as daily love. The springs after the typhoon, I stood alone at dawn, lighting a single candle and praying, "Lord, make my heart a lamp." Sunlight broke over the hills, and she smiled, not because suffering would vanish, but because faith's flame could never be put out. In Akita, the prophecy's answer had already begun, but as the seasons turned again, the world beyond Akita grew restless. Strange weather patterns darkened the news, rivers drying in days, hail falling in summer, crops withering before harvest. People spoke of markets crashing overnight, of wars whispered in embassies. Yet in the quiet corners of the chapel, I had noticed something else, more strangers arriving. They came not as tourists, but as pilgrims. Some carried nothing but a small bag, others, a photograph of someone they had lost. They came because they had read about the woman who once warned the world from this very place, and because the unease in their hearts told them the warning was not yet finished. One evening, an exhausted mother from Osaka collapsed at the chapel door with her child. I had knelt beside her, giving her water. Hearing the trembling words, "The cities are changing. People don't speak to each other anymore." I have felt the weight of Sister Sasagawa's final line, "The greatest trial will come in the coldness of hearts," settle like a stone in her chest. Kenji began organizing small circles of prayer in the marketplace, not to preach, but simply to let people talk, to remember each other's names. Luca took long walks into the hills, bringing back baskets of mushrooms and firewood for those who had nothing, and slowly, in the midst of a world unraveling, Akita became a lantern in the fog. Still, there were nights when I lay awake, hearing the wind in the trees and wondering if the prophecy's darkest hour was still ahead. But each morning she rose, lit the chapel's candles, and whispered the same prayer, "Lord, keep the flame alive." And each morning, against all reason, the flame did not go out. Snow began to fall in October, heavy and unrelenting, burying the fields before the farmers could bring in their last harvest. The mountain roads froze over, cutting Akita off from the nearest city for days at a time. The cold seeped into the bones of the people, but I had noticed something else. It was seeping into their hearts as well. The marketplace grew quieter. Kenji's prayer circles had fewer and fewer faces, the pilgrims who had once brought stories, and laughter now huddled in corners, whispering only about shortages, rumors of violence. and the shadow of a world they no longer recognized. Even Luca, once a steady source of cheer, began speaking less, his eyes drifting toward the horizon as though expecting bad news to crest the hills at any moment. One night, as the wind howled like a living thing, I found herself alone in the chapel. The candles flickered violently, and for a moment she feared they would blow out. She stepped forward to shield the flame with her hands, her heart pounding. That was when she saw it, a faint shape in the far corner, barely lit by the candle light. It was a woman, older, frail, her hands clasped in front of her. I froze, because she knew exactly who it was, though she had never met her in life. Sister Agnes Sasagawa. The figure's lips did not move, yet I felt the words inside her like a whisper pressed against her soul. The hour is near. The fire will not come from the sky, but from the hearts of men. Aya's breath caught. She wanted to speak, to ask what to do, but the figure simply looked toward the altar and then toward the door, as if to say, go. And then she was gone. The next morning, Aya told Kenji and Luca what she had seen. Kenji frowned deeply, his pride and stubbornness bristling. Aya, he said, you've been working hard. Visions, they come to tired minds. But Luca, quiet and gentle, placed a hand on her shoulder. Or maybe, he said softly, they come when the world needs them most. That same week, word came from the city. Riots had broken out over food. Entire districts were without power. Families were fleeing north, looking for safe places to stay. Within days, they began arriving in Akita. Some came grateful, some came desperate, some came armed. I remembered Sister Sasagawa's words, not from the sky, from the hearts of men. First families arrived quietly, thin from hunger, their eyes darting like startled animals. I opened the convent doors to them without hesitation, laying blankets on the cold stone floor. But soon the trickle became a flood. By the fourth day, the courtyard was packed. Children cried from the cold. Men argued over scraps of bread. The air was thick with distrust. Stranger against stranger, villager against newcomer. Kenji stood in the center of it all, trying to bring order. We have rules here, he barked, and we will follow them, or no one will survive the winter. His voice was strong, but I saw the fear behind it. Pride made him cling to control, but the tighter he tried to hold it, the more it slipped through his fingers. The breaking point came one night when a fight erupted in the chapel itself. Two men, both desperate for the same loaf of bread, crashed into the altar, sending the sacred vessels clattering to the floor. Gasps filled the room. Aya's heart ached as she saw one of the men spit at the crucifix, muttering, your God isn't feeding us. That was when Lucas stepped forward. He said nothing at first, just knelt on the cold stone and began to pick up the scattered pieces of the altar cloth. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from something deeper. When he finally spoke, his voice carried through the silence like a bell. This place is not ours to guard like treasure. It is ours to give away like bread. No one moved. Even the wind outside seemed to pause. Lucas stood, took the last loaf in the convent's pantry, and tore it in half. Then he gave it, not to the villagers, not to the pilgrims, but to the two men who had fought. Eat, he said simply, and when it is gone, we will find more, together. For a moment, I had thought the men might reject it out of pride, but slowly, they took it. And in that act, so small, so foolish by the world's measure, something shifted. The tension loosened. A woman in the back took off her coat and wrapped it around a shivering child. A farmer stepped forward with 3 potatoes he had hidden. People began to give, not hoard. I have felt it in her chest, like the first crack of light before sunrise. Later that night, as she refilled the candles at the altar, she felt that same presence she had seen before. She didn't turn, but she knew Sister Sasagawa was near, and in the quiet, a single phrase brushed her heart. The fire has begun, but so has the light.